xisuma just showed off a backdrop to display his copper golem armor. In a video, he commented on the difficulty of making a pulsing light using comparators. I tried my hand on it, and this is what I came up with. I started out with a little bit of testing, seeing what I could do with comparators, and from there, came up with a working design. This is a lot of comparators, definitely not optimized, but it works. After having designed an actual working model, I was able to take that design and optimize it. I went in two different routes from there. One was a very simple model. This one, however, only pulses half the length from 7 power to 15, I believe it is. Yeah, 7 to 15. The other one pulses all the way from 0 to 15, but does use a bit more in the resources. Still not too much. I'll start with the simple one because it's simple, easy to understand. What we have here is a fairly basic comparator clock. If you don't know how comparator clocks work, basically a comparator takes an input, sees what that value is, and puts it out. So 15 going in, 15 coming out. You have two different modes. One is comparing, the other one is subtracting, but for the clock that doesn't matter. The key thing about a comparator clock is that a comparator takes a tick to process the 15 going in to the 15 going out. Again, you'll notice there's a slight bit of a delay when it turns on. We can use that one tick delay to then loop around. So we have 15 going in, 15 coming out. The power reduces 1 as it goes to the next redstone, 14 going in, 14 coming out. When I remove the torch, the 14 now transmits a 13 signal to this redstone, goes into here as a 13, comes out as a 13, goes down to 12, 12, 12, 11, 11, 11, around and around until it decays to 0. Now the key here is every time it goes from a redstone to a redstone dust, the value of the power decreases by 1. If we take a block, because comparators can send signals through a block, we now have a 15 power going in, coming out to a 15 power, and then 15. So the only place that it can decay in this signal is between these two dusts. So removing the torch, every 2 redstone ticks, 1 tick going in, 1 tick coming out, the signal decays by 1. So coming back to the redstone clock, we have a 15 power coming in from the torch, goes around and around, decays down to 0, and when that hits 0, the torch turns back on and sends another 15 power back into the clock. So it gives us a nice pulsing, decreasing signal strength coming out. So we have a way to decrease our signal, but now how do we increase it again? Well, we come back to the comparator, and this time subtraction mode. The difference between base mode and subtraction mode is when you power a comparator from the side. So again, we have 15 power coming in, 15 power coming out. If we reduce the signal, we have a 13 power coming in, a 13 power coming out. In normal mode, a comparator compares the side output to the main output. If the side output is greater than the main input, well, if the side input is greater than the main input, it doesn't output a signal. However, if the side output is equal to or less than the main input, then it does output a signal. And that signal is exactly the signal that goes in. However, if we now switch this to subtraction mode, it takes the input signal, the main one, and takes the signal from the side and subtracts that value from the main input value. So so we're left with 1. 12 minus 13 is 1. And we can reduce that signal a bit more. Now we have 10, 13, so we have 3. If we go back so they're equal, 13 and 13, 13 minus 13 is 0. Those are two of the main functions of a comparator. Coming back to this simple clock, you can now see we have our clock going around, decaying, and here we have a redstone block outputting a signal of 15. This could be a torch, it would work just the same. This could be a redstone power of 15. It doesn't matter as long as there's a signal source of 15 going into the back of the comparator. And we have the comparator set to subtraction mode. So we have our two signals decaying from 15 to 0. So that means this signal goes from 15 all the way down to 0 and then resets, same here. However, here we have 15 going in from the main input and 15 going in from the side output. So instead of having a 15 power that counts from 15 down to 0, what we're given is a count that counts up instead of down. It is weakening here, so it's not exactly the same circuit as over there, but you get the same idea. And this is where the subtraction mode is important. If it's the comparing mode, this will always just be a 15 output because 15 is always greater than 14 down to 0. So subtracting, we're able to inverse this count and count up instead of down. So how does this work with the clock? Well, we have the comparator right here powering this redstone dust, as well as this comparator powering that exact same redstone dust. And they are almost in sync. Because of that delay from the comparator, this comparator updates the redstone dust one redstone tick later than this comparator. So it's not perfect, but for the sake of simplicity, I just decided to leave it there. So we have one comparator counting from 15 down to 0, at the same time as the other comparator is counting up from 0 to 15. That means they meet right about at the 7th point. So you can see this is the 7th redstone signal with the 7 there. And that gives us a 7-block pulse going back and forth. So compared to our full pulse, it takes half of the time and dims only half of the way. But I think it may be a worthy sacrifice if your use case only needs that half pulse. Or, I mean, you're going to prefer it aesthetically. Not going all the way down to 0 could be nice. We can go on to a slightly more complicated system, but it still isn't that bad. We have our identical clock setup, just rotated, and that clock powers the back of this comparator and the side of that comparator. So again, we have our comparator counting down and our comparator inverting that count and counting up. To be able to go all the way down to 0, because one of these comparators will always be at least a 7 power, we need to deactivate one at a time. We can do this by powering the side of the comparator. And at a 15 power, it will always be 0. So if I remove this block, this comparator can no longer power the redstone dust, and you can see it decays down to 0, the side gets powered, and it stays at 0. And the same if I remove the comparator, we count up to 15, and then it goes to 0 and stays at 0 because we're powering the side at 15. To be able to power one at a time, I'm using the simplest T flip-flop that I know, a waxed copper bulb. A copper bulb toggles its state from on to off every time it gets powered, whereas a redstone lamp needs to actually maintain the power to stay on. The bulb turns on and off every other time. If we look at the comparator output, comparators have another trick where they can sense the state of some blocks, one of those being the copper bulb. It may look like it's detecting the power state of the lamp, and it kind of is, but it doesn't matter what block is there, it's just getting powered by the redstone. So we can use this toggleability of the copper bulb to then leech off of our redstone torch right here in the clock. After placing the bulbs, making sure that they are in the opposite state, you can then just compare, take a comparator output and go right into the side, and that is basically it. If you're interested in building either of these, I'll show a quick tutorial on how to do it. To start with the simple system, we need to start at the location that we want the output to be. So let's say I want my output to be facing that way. From there, we can place our clock, which is just 3 deep and 2 wide, with a solid block directly behind our output. We put one comparator facing into the block, a comparator next to it facing away from the block, and a redstone dust, and 2 redstone dust behind the comparators. I forgot, we do need 2 blocks to the side, one for redstone dust to power the block, where a redstone torch will go. After this, we now have our decaying comparator clock. To then make our main output count back up instead of staying at 0, we'll take another comparator and point it into the side. And this could go on either side, it doesn't matter. As long as we have one of our clock redstones pointing into the side of the comparator, and the comparator is pointing at our output, we're good. So I'll say I want it on this side. We just leave the comparator there and power it from the main input at a level 15 and switch it to subtract. And now you can see it's 15 down to 7, back up to 15. Onto the full pulse system. We'll again start with our output, and I'll give myself a little bit more room. So let's say I want my output right here facing this way. We'll need to power it with two comparators again. One goes straight to the redstone and the other one through a block to the side. From there, we can place our clock based on this comparator. So we'll want a redstone dust there, a full block, and a redstone dust. That way we can place our two comparators, one going into the block, one going out, and our redstone dust out the back. And then, like before, we'll place a torch there and... Oh, right. Because we have a comparator here, the redstone dust wants to point at the comparator. We can fix that either by placing a redstone dust on top, everything should work as normal, or we can use the function of a target block. Target blocks make redstone dust want to point at them. So we can use that, and now our redstone dust is pointing both at the comparator and the block where the torch is, and everything works as it should. We do want a torch out the back so that it will power our comparator, give us that nice subtraction mode. Yes, they do both need to be in subtraction mode. And now we can go to our other comparator, which isn't currently touched, and add in just two blocks, one behind and the other one getting powered from our clock directly. That means that our comparator is powering the redstone dust, which is getting transmitted through this block as well, and powering our comparator. At this stage, we have almost the identical function as this clock. It takes one more comparator, which is why I didn't get rid of that one, but it does actually have a synced up input. Both inputs into this power are going on the same tick without that one tick delay, so it's actually a little bit of a cleaner signal. You can just leave it here if you want that clean signal, but I'll go all the way and show you how to finish up the system. This last part of the system is turning off one of these comparators at a time. To do that, we need to have a comparator facing towards a redstone dust, which goes into the side of that comparator. And same thing over here. We have a comparator going into a redstone dust, which goes into the side of that comparator. Off the back of each of these comparators on the red blocks, we'll place a copper lamp. From each of those copper lamps, we'll draw a line connecting wherever, as long as it's not getting powered like by another torch or something, and cover the top with redstone dust. At this point, you want to make sure that the lamps are turning on opposite of each other, and if they aren't, it's as easy as breaking one of these redstone dusts at the top, let one of them turn on, place the redstone dust back, and then they'll be opposite of each other. If you were able to follow all of those steps correctly, you should now have a redstone dust that goes from 0 up to 15 and back to 0 nice and smoothly. And something to note is there is a difference between what I have here and what xisuma has in his video. xisuma's solution was to use observers. Observers update every tick, and if you get a nice loop going around, and get those outputs pointing towards redstone dust, you'll get a count that goes every single tick. Because we have two comparators, this output goes every other tick. That means that the observer output will go up and down twice as fast as the comparator output. I don't know if there's a way to make a faster comparator clock than this. If there is, you could definitely use that and match up these signals, but as it stands, I believe it will always be slower to use a comparator clock. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? No, it's just a difference. That means that in the time that this one goes from half to full, the observer clock would go from 0 to full. Or in the time that this clock goes from 0 to full light, the observer clock would go from 0 to full, back to 0, back to full. 2 cycles, twice as fast. Thanks for sticking around. I hope you enjoyed the video and learned something along the way. If you enjoy this, you're always welcome to stay. I make some other Minecraft videos here and there, and generally just try to have a good time. But whatever you like, have yourself a good day. Bye.